Hello everyone, I am Jonathan, also known as the PC Genie, and today we're going to be talking about how swords were used to defeat armour. In this case we're going to be talking about longswords, because this is part of another collaboration of Luciano. He's done a video which is talking about how we use basically katana to defeat samurai armour. So, in the similar sort of context, I'm going to be talking about how longswords were used to defeat armour of, well, knights and men-at-arms such as brigandine, plate armour, mail, things like that. So, firstly, there are a lot of similarities in the fact that longswords, just like katana, although this particular version I've got here is not the best example, it's quite heavy and clunky in comparison, but it still gives a rough idea. It basically is more of a lightweight, usually cutting and thrusting weapon, which certainly is very effective against unarmoured opponents. Just like Luciano said, it's a similar situation, and just one stroke I could severely debilitate or cause a mortal wound on my opponent. All I have to do is get the right sort of measure and distance and timing and all that, just to make sure I get a good hit in the first place, and then that could be it, that's it. You know, they'll decide they'll perhaps stop fighting in order to get medical treatment because they don't want to risk their lives anymore. They might actually have an injury that's going to get infected later on and kill them slowly, or they might have something that quickly bleeds out and kills them. Or, of course, some sort of wound that kills them almost instantly. All sorts of things can happen, even permanent injuries to things like the tendons on the limbs or the fingers and things like that, which stop them from being able to fight effectively ever again. So all of these can happen with a sword, because it's sharp. Unlike what they see on movies and TV, a sword is not this heavy iron bar that just smacks things apart. If you want a blunt weapon that smashes things, go for a mace or a poleaxe instead. These swords are lightweight, cutting and thrusting weapons, like I said earlier. So, the problem now is the fact that the sharpness can be stopped by armour. So if I had the same sort of attitude, where all I need to do is get one good hit, maybe I need to just do a draw cut, that's pulling or pushing the blade along in that sort of cutting stake sort of motion to slice something open, or do an impact cut where I chop something open, just like an axe hitting a tree. That isn't gonna work if I hit some plates. So I could be thinking, aha, here's my foe, he's left his head undefended, and I just need to bear down and split their skull open. So then I chop, and nothing happens. So the problem is, unlike, again, things like movies and TV, you can't just stab through a breastplate, you can't split a helmet open in most cases. It's very difficult. So rather than actually hitting the armour and hoping to do some sort of injury through it, you have to go around the armour. And unlike in the example that we've got with Luciano, excuse me, the armour covers even more, so it's even more of a problem than when you've got something like samurai armour versus a katana. Because areas like the joints he mentioned around the shoulders, and areas where the knee area is going to connect to the sort of tacit type area, can't remember what they were called, but gaps like that don't even exist on plate armour. You're pretty much restricted to lots smaller and more specific areas. And that's where we go to something called half swording. What is half swording? That. I grab my blade, and I'll get closer for this so you can see better. I've got one hand still staying in the same area as before on the sword, and then one hand goes somewhere, it doesn't have to be an exact location, but somewhere up along the blade, so I can manipulate the point finely like a spear. A very short spear. And what that allows me to do is, apart from the fact that I can hold it like a bar to push and manipulate an opponent's limbs, their sword, things like that, it also means that I can very precisely control the point really quickly to get into specific areas. So, for example, you can get a knight or a man-at-arms through areas like the eye slots in the helmet. You can also get them, depending on the armour, you might be able to get them in somewhere like the neck. The armpits are a very good place, sometimes inside the elbow, also underneath the cuff, trying to go into the wrist from there. Behind the knee is another one, And apart from that, if you're able to grapple and manipulate, again, using the sword as a bar, and then start maybe doing more unarmed style combat, but help using this leverage bar of a sword, you can then maybe throw the opponent to the ground, and then you can perhaps have your free time to lift the visor up, get a little dagger and gotcha! You can do all kinds of things. So that's why you've got a very different way of fighting against someone who's got little or no armour on, or lighter armour, which were just your standard, your ordinary sort of cuts and thrusts, just holding your sword in a normal fashion, stabbing and cutting in a very normal fashion, whereas with armour, none of that works and you need to do really weird things. Another thing you can do besides half swording is what's called a mortal, which means a murder stroke. Now this is where you convert your sharp weapon that's for cutting and thrusting into a blunt weapon if you don't have a mace or poleaxe or something on you. So you simply hold the sword upside down, and bearing in mind you can either have the right sort of grip so it doesn't cut you if you're holding a blade, or have gloves or things like that. There are ways around it to make sure you don't get injured yourself. And then you basically can start using the sword in a more normal fashion, but you're holding it upside down so that the quillons act like a sort of a pickaxe or that spike of a warhammer. Or you can use the pommel as a smashing weapon like a mace. It's going to be a lot more clunky and a lot slower than using the blade, because this is not how it's normally intended to be used, but with the right skill and technique you can still use it to hit the armour and cause impact injuries such as bruising, concussions, broken bones, that sort of thing behind the armour. So almost ignoring the armour and just letting the force reverberate through. Although, again, it's going to be a bit difficult with things like gambesons and padding, which can start to reduce the amount of damage that will do. But it's still something that can do quite a lot of injury, especially if you've got a heavier pommel and more back weighting in a sword, which allows it to smash more. So that's one general idea. Apart from that, again, like I said, the grappling helps. So doing things like takedowns and throws, although I would guess not so viable on the battlefield because you're just going to get murdered from about 6 different angles by their bodies. In something like self-defense or a duel or something like that, you can manipulate the limbs of the knight. You can make sure to throw them down, do takedowns, disarms and locks, those sorts of things, as if you were fighting unarmed with them. And that can allow you to do things like, again, get opportunities to get something like a dagger and stab in the gaps, remove their armour and start to get them that way, and other fashions like that. Or just indeed, rather than killing them, you don't have to, you could just use the same manipulations to capture them instead. So you've got them, their intact armour, maybe get a nice sweet ransom, fantastic. So that is how you would fight with a knight in armour. In terms of specific techniques, I can go into those in the future, but I'll be looking for a partner. And that's it for today. Thanks again to my patrons for supporting me. And beyond that, again, I'll be trying to look for, looking for people to practice with. And when I do finally find someone, I can start showing you specific techniques and things, rather than speaking in more broad and general terms. But I hope you found this interesting, and see you in the next video. Goodbye.